Peace, and welcome to a brand new episode of Out the Box Talks. I am your host, Cril. We are back for another wonderful episode. I want to shout out to all of our viewers, all of our listeners. If you have been checking out our recent episodes or any of our episodes in weeks prior or years prior, right? Because last year we had a really successful year as far as consistency and putting out quality, thought-provoking interviews. I just want to thank you all for tuning in. I have another really dope interview tonight. It's a really dope panel. You know, I don't really get a chance to say panel on my shows much, but I'm excited to have a number of really insightful MCs and a producer as well, and just a collective of a new project that I'm really enjoying at the time. So we're going to have, our guests joining us shortly. But before I do that, I just want to shout out a couple things about Out the Box. Remember, you can go to our website, which is outtheboxmedia.com, and just get acquainted with all the other stuff that we got going on. Maybe you want to catch up on some of our previous episodes. They're all listed on the website. And we also have our merch store, which is outtheboxmedia.bigcartel.com, where you can find merch like this snapback hat that I have on, this sweater that I have on, and a number of other things that, you can kind of rock your Out the Box gear if you resonate and you feel what we're doing in this movement. And also, if you want to donate to Out the Box, right? We have our PayPal link, the paypal.me/outtheboxmedia. And we also have our Cash App, which is the hashtag OutTheBoxRep. Now, I can't forget, because we are also streaming on, the audio platforms, right? And so we have our audio podcast, which can be found on platforms like Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts, right? So if you're watching this episode on YouTube, that's awesome, right? We're glad that you're here. But if you want to hear the high quality audio, you can also jump to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Anchor.fm, generally where you would catch audio podcasts, and just search for Out the Box Talks. A lot of this is also on the website as well. And last but not least, I want to shout out my Patreon page. So we have a patreon.com/outtheboxmedia page where you can get access to exclusive interview clips that have never been heard before, only for the Patreon subscribers and those who go above and beyond to support Out the Box. All right. So I just want to get that out of the way. And prepare for our guests that we have joining us today for this show. So without further ado, I want to talk to y'all about the artists that we have on the show today. They are a list of seasoned MCs, right? That represent the New York area. And we also have a producer that's representing the San Francisco area, right? They have a new project out entitled Moses Herman Jacobs, and it is put out by Dupo Studios. We also have the brother who is responsible for Dupo Studios, Mr. Jacques, joining us as well today. So we're going to really talk about this project, the themes of it, the concept, and just their overall commitment to this really well put together hip hop project. We're going to jump into it. So I want to welcome to our Out the Box Talks listening audience, the seasoned New York City MCs, brother Mikal Amin, Sir Tumes, Long Division, and also from San Francisco, producer and DJ Brian Oblivion, as well as Jacques of Dupo Studios. I want to welcome each and every one of you to Out the Box. Welcome. How are y'all? So we got a lot of people in the room. Feel free to just, unmute your mic one by one and just introduce yourself. Tell the people how you doing.
I'm all right. I'm chilling.
Shout out. Yep. That's good.
Doing good over here, chilling.
Indeed, indeed.
Good to see all these faces. I haven't seen these guys in a while.
Wonderful, wonderful. We got a big room today. This is I don't think I've ever done this without the box, right? So this is we're always breaking ground here. So I'm happy to have y'all, each of y'all here. So like I said, I want to talk about this particular project that's out right now. And I think it's really dope that we have Jacques in the room, because I think it's fitting that he kind of gives us a glimpse of Moses Herman Jacobs, right? In my understanding, the project was started years ago by you, Jacques Dupo, and given life by everyone involved. Can you start by telling us about Dupo, the design studio, and the way that this project came together and your initial vision for it?
Yeah, sure. So like, I'm a designer by trade. And so I had a small, tiny design studio called Dupo, right? Dupo. And, one of the goals of the design studio was like, one, I'm a Black designer. There's like maybe 2% of us in that field. And so this is going to be like one of the very few Black studios, Black-owned studios. So I was really happy about that. And the space was really the design space is about even trying to get other people, other Black designers, tech people, programmers into the space, because we're really just not represented well in that tech space. And so the studio had this idea about just trying to get people more into the field by giving them real projects. Like very real projects, not just fake shit, but real projects that they can work on and then they can use to either boost their careers or get just jobs in the profession later on. So that was like the start of the studio. And early on within the studio, one of the ideas I came up with was just I also wanted to do music, right? So and so I had this idea about, it would be really cool if I could just do a music project. I'm not an MC. I dabble a very little in it. But, I have these people that I know who do amazing shit. And I want to get them. It would be cool if I could somehow get them in a room together and work on this project. So that was the start of it. Like really just about getting people who I feel who are really, who share the same value with me, like politically, but also share the same value around just the craft, right? Even though I'm not an MC, I'm a designer, and I do have strong feelings about just being good at your craft and always getting better. And these people, I've seen them work. I've worked with Dan personally. We had a project together in the past, but I also know him. And Tumes, I've seen his work. The dude's like a Renaissance man. Professor Brian Oblivion, I've designed some of his work, but I knew him as a friend. But just hearing his albums, I knew how dedicated he is to the craft. And Mikal, the first time I met him, I was always blown away by him just because he was just an ill freestyler. Just on that alone, I remember him just battling. We used to have a radio show, Dan and myself, Blowing Division, and he came to the show and he just started battling kids on the street. And so it was just, I was like, this dude is nice, one, and he's just battling, just trying to kill people regardless of where he is.
I forgot.
So I felt like, if we get these people in a room together or just on a project together, I think it'd be amazing because all of them are great MCs. They're great people. And lyrically, they know how to write and they know how to hold, they just know how to shape songs really well. And getting them with Brian, who's a great producer and really has his past work, which I love a lot. He knows how to hold things together pretty well and have something that's sort of because he's a DJ and because he's a producer, but he knows how to make things have a great beginning and have a great end and have a really smooth flow. So I really appreciated about his work. So yeah, I just felt like get them in a room together. Let's see what happens. Give them a sort of box to work within, and then as creative people, you have parameters, and you can work within those parameters, and you could create something ill. And that was pretty much the start of it. A lot of it's just them doing what they do, right? And just that's it.
How difficult was it to just get all of them to commit to this project and, produce it into what we see today?
That's a good question for all of them to answer. For me, it was just really my role after getting them to agree to a project was just to sort of project manage. Like, all right, hey guys, let's meet every, have a cadence about when we're meeting, making sure we're trying to talk to each other and figure out like what exactly is this project going to be. And that's really it. Like really just super loose guidelines, I'd say at the very beginning, just about getting them in the room together. And then once we all decided what it was, and then maybe, it'd be good to hear what they think too. But once we decided what it was just a matter of just, slowly piecing it together and just sort of like staying on task with it, which, eventually my role was just really project managers, making sure like we were just hitting, I guess, our deadlines, if there were real deadlines, but because it was a long project at the end. But that was pretty much it. I think they could probably answer better. Like they probably have better answers to that question than myself, though.
Got it. So, what I want to ask y'all is like, can y'all kind of like share, like what I actually want to do is go around the room, right, and give each artist an opportunity to, just share a little bit about yourself, right, and what your unique contribution is to this project. So I guess we could start with Tumes, as I see him up at the top. You could unmute your mic and
for sure. Emcee, also known as Sir Tumes, Tumes. It's interesting. Historically, me, I'm from New York City. I do a lot of things, but I've been an MC for a very long time, and actually at that moment I wasn't living in New York when this project came to me. That's like I'm gonna bring that into the back end, which is kind of funny. But yeah, I'm an MC, producer myself as well. And, came up sort of as an actor and a whole lot of other stuff. I have a long resume with that, different types of things. But this project was interesting because I had came off of like living a couple of years actually in Spain. I was living in Spain and I had been traveling. I was a complete transient at the moment. I hadn't lived in New York for a few years. And I was living in Europe and performing, working with a band that I worked with. And I had wrote 3 or 4 albums in like the span of like a year and a half, maybe even like a year. And this project came, I can't remember the genesis of it. I'm hoping that Mikal or Brian or someone will have a better kind of brain when it comes to actual dates and things, because I can't, especially because that was a really crazy time for me. I actually lived in like 4 places in the span of the time right before I wrote it, which I think influenced the writing of it, and I'll get to that in a second. But yeah, so I had written all these things, and I had came back to the US after a stint in Jamaica for a minute, and then I was in New York. Wanted to leave there. I wasn't really feeling the vibe. So I actually was living in Los Angeles. And when I wrote this whole project, I was actually living in LA. I had just got to LA, actually, I think. I had been in LA like maybe a week or two when we had decided to start writing, or I got the beats. I remember that only because I remember walking in Sherman Oaks area writing. I have a habit. I like to write and move. I can't sit down and write. I grab like my phone or my book and I write traveling and moving around. So actually I have a vivid memory with the nostalgia track, walking around Sherman Oaks, writing there. And that's kind of what I remember about it. It's like it was a blur. And then I recorded these demos in LA, and then when we moved back to New York, or I remember when I moved back to New York, or when I came back to visit, we actually recorded the stuff, but it was done remotely, which is interesting. Like it was not done in the same room, And so it's so interesting because we were doing remote before remote was like the main thing, And as far as my contribution, I wrote these 3 joints. Brian laced us with great beats that I know he tailored to each person, and it was just a really what I said about my traveling influenced it because I ended up writing. I don't know if I realized it in the moment, but I ended up writing about this person who has this weird relationship with home and things like that, which I'm sure I was in my emotional self, and I was like channeling it into a character that wasn't me. That's very different from me. And it was also interesting because when this project kind of came to us, it was definitely a storytelling project. And that was something that I actually wanted to do. So I was like, I would actually like to do something where I was writing a full-on stories or narrative or creating a persona that's not me and rapping as that. That was something I was really interested in. So, I kind of danced around and went to a lot of different places. But, that's pretty much the gist on my end.
Wonderful, wonderful. I guess we could go to Long Division next. Just give us like a brief explanation on how you uniquely contributed to this project.
Sure. Well, Jacques alluded to the fact that we had a radio show for a number of years, and I've known him for even longer. I think we met in the New York Poets Cafe, which he mentioned to me pretty recently, which I had forgotten about. But yeah, we did numerous projects together. I always respected Jacques as a designer. Jacques is also a very good DJ, which he didn't mention. But I remember hanging at his house and checking out new vinyl and stuff in the like late '90s. But Jacques came to me with the idea, and initially I was kind of like, I didn't really know if I had what it took to contribute to it. I felt a little bit like kind of skeptical of like my own ability to contribute, to be quite honest. I've known Mikal and Tumes for a long time, just, in the scene. I used to play, there was one core rhythm record I used to play on my during my sets on East Village Radio all the time. You remember when Mikal was battling people in the street. I remember when he made a reference to Sonny Carson, which is, I don't know, it's a film of kind of like a cult classic from the 70s that I was kind of blown away by because I'd never really heard someone just pull that out of somewhere. We discussed it afterwards. But so yeah, I always had a lot of respect for these guys. And, once we started working together, we were basically, none of us were literally ever in a room together. So we were kind of just like, Tumes said, like dancing around it a little bit. Like we never were like, okay, we're just going to make this project about such and such a thing. We're going to do something about gentrification. Let's write our gentrification rhymes. Like it wasn't like that, which I think actually ended up making it better because it was a little bit more nuanced than that. And things kind of fell into place without us necessarily. I just noticed certain patterns that emerged on the album that we didn't really even discuss beforehand, but that just kind of like developed on their own. So yeah, I don't think we were all in a room until we recorded it. So, which was also kind of interesting. Like we'd all met in person before, but I don't think we were all in a room until we actually like laid everything down. Like we shared the lyrics and stuff. What was that platform we were using? Like Bass
Google
Jump?
Hangout.
No, there was some like Bass Jump or some one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We were using that back and forth, but then when we finally got together, it was crazy. We were like, oh wow, shit, we're about to record this thing, and yeah, it's just been a great ride all the way. So I didn't really even hear it all the way through until the other day, and I was just really, really blown away by what everybody else contributed to. So that's all I have to say really for now.
Awesome. Go ahead, Mikal. Share your thoughts on how you got involved.
We're all gonna have to collectively get our memories because I don't remember battling a whole bunch of people on the street, but I definitely remember freestyling. That's what's up. If I beat him, that's cool. Yeah, Mikal Amin, Brooklyn resident for the last 20 years, MC, educator, and honestly, it's pretty amazing because everybody's kind of alluded. I've known Tumes almost 20 years at this point. Jacques and Long Division the same. Tumes and I have recorded numerous things together on each other's projects. We actually had a small group for a minute together, worked together. Actually, the only person that was really new to me was Brian. And I know that Brian and Jacques had a long-standing relationship. So kind of to what Long Division was saying, I really just came prepared to do the rhymes. I knew who I was working with. I have a lot of respect, personally, politically, creatively, for everybody that's on the project. So it was, to be honest with you, even though we weren't in the same space, I mean, it was pretty much like it is now. We were on screen. I was in Brooklyn. Like Tumes said, he was all over the place. He was L.A., Spain. Brian was in the Bay. I want to say Jacques was in Brooklyn at the time, but I think you were transitioning between Brooklyn and LA. So everybody was pretty much moving around. Long Division was in Jersey. But I think the relationships that we had outside and beyond that made it really fluid. Because, yeah, like Long Division said, I mean, what I remember of those sessions when we were on the Google Hangout kind of conceptualizing things, we kind of were just, which is sort of what you do when you're in the studio with people. You hang out. And I felt like we were just kind of like catching up on life, and Brian would come in, play some stuff. We'd all joke around and everything. So yeah, I mean, what I was really just trying to do is do service and do right by the records that Brian was giving us, because the beats were dope. It's really easy to make something dope when the music's dope. And he was just bringing stuff in and listening, and you could tell like we would sit down. Jacques would kind of get us in the Google Hangout meet. It was like 2016. I actually just checked my Google to see some of the Hangout invites. It was like spring of 2016, maybe a little earlier, and we were just kicking it. And then like, maybe a session later or session 2 later, Brian like, oh, so check out these beats. We're like, yep. And I know for me, I'm kind of similar to Tumes. I think I wrote a bunch of them or drafts of things when I was just on the subway. I tend to do that along the subway rides. I was just, same thing, get my notebook out or something. And then I just wrote itself. So, similar to what Tumes was, I kind of wanted to just create a persona and sort of show the rise and fall of someone kind of like leaving home and coming back sort of defeated. But it was also sort of this kind of like metaphor, allegory about the city itself, because I hadn't left the city. And I know, Emcee and I used to have a lot of conversations about the changes in the city. He's a native New Yorker. I'd been here for a while. I'm originally from Jersey, but I'd been here at that point for like 15 years. So I'd seen a lot of transitions in it. So I kind of wanted to, with my song, sort of like use a person's transitions, but it also was kind of doubling as kind of like seeing the city being on top and then sort of like falling into decay and ruin. And that was not something that we really discussed out and out in these sessions. We would explain.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interject, man. Your internet is going very, very choppy. So hold that thought, because we can come back to you. Maybe you might want to try to, go back out and come back in, and see. But hold that thought. Well, let's actually just go to Brian quick, and then we'll bring you back. Brian, go ahead, man. Talk about your introduction to the project.
Oh yeah, what's up? So Professor Brian Oblivion, been making beats since I was a little kid, pretty much. Just kind of came up with that on my own, teaching myself. Didn't really have a crew or anything, so I just kind of figuring stuff out on my own. As far as my history with music up to this point with this project, I was doing mostly instrumental stuff, putting out a beat tape. I kind of categorize as a beat tape album, and then I did one. My first album was a little bit more of a collage piece, a little more intensive with some turntablism. And I had collaborated with, I'd known Jacques for a while, so I actually hit him up and asked him to collaborate on some artwork for those projects. So that's how we started working together as far as the music and art, collaborating. So after doing those 2 projects together, then Jacques came to me. He said he had an idea for an album. He wanted to bring an album together, sort of. He wanted to have an album project that he could design around for Dupo Studios. And he already had that idea for the players involved. He wanted me to produce it. And so that's how I came into it with all these guys. And I hadn't, I don't think I'd met anybody. I might have met Dan at like a personal gather, like Jacques' wedding or something. I might have met, I don't know if I met Mikal or Tumes at that point, but yeah, so we, you know, and I was on the West Coast and these guys are on the East Coast. So I guess, yeah, Tumes was in LA for part of the time, but either way, we're all kind of separated. So we came together online for these hangouts, and it was cool. Like we, you know, just my recollection of kind of how the project came together and like my contributions. I remember just discussing roughly like kind of what we all wanted to do as far as a theme, or if we wanted to have a theme. And I think early on there was interest, like I think Emcee and Mikal both mentioned wanting to come from like a character perspective. So that was like really all, I think that's all we had initially. And from what I recall, we wanted some storytelling in there. And I was studying these guys' works, all their solo work and their prior music, and then going through some of my stuff, and always making beats, you know, anyways. So working on stuff and thinking about, you know, with these MCs in mind. And so came up with, you know, a cache of stuff to share. And I sent out tracks to all three of these guys, kind of based on what I thought would sound good, you know, for them. And also keeping in mind all this is going together on an album. So trying to keep those two things in mind. You know, there's always a selection process. You get some tossbacks, and then some that are like, yeah. So there was a little bit of back and forth with that, getting the right beats to these guys for them to want to write to. And then we just kind of went from there. And like, I think we started from, as far as Jacques' role, like project managing at that point, like I remember him setting deadlines. It was kind of like, let's get the first song. Like he just kept us on track, you know, kept the meetings going, made sure we met, and kept discussing the project as we were all working on it individually. And which was cool because we were never all together working together, but it kept the project cohesive in that way. And then we would share, like after the first song, you know, everyone had to get one song done, and then we would all share it and we'd all hear each other's stuff. And then that would start to influence what each MC would want to write, you know, moving forward. And even I think some beats changed up, like, oh, actually, let me, you know, get this other one. So I think, yeah, something about the process was really influenced how it all came together, because even though we weren't all in the room together, like we were constantly talking and collaborating. And it's kind of interesting because like it's like a group album really, but there's no like group track. Like there's all solo tracks. It's all
about that hold that thought, because I definitely want to talk about that as we go through the interview. Let's jump back to Mikal so he could finish his thought. But that was really great. That input was great, Brian. Mikal, go ahead, finish your thought, man.
Oh, no, I appreciate that. All I was just going to simply say is that, yeah, like, you know, really kind of Brian kind of finished it up for me. Just, it was such a collaborative process, and the irony that we weren't physically in the same space, but the energy was just so fluid, just because of the relationships and Jacques really kind of keeping us on process. And then, you know, Brian's music's dope. Long Division is dope lyrically, and Tumes is a beast lyrically. So yeah, it's funny that Brian's story even just made me realize, like yeah, there was very much like, okay, once that first sort of batch came in, it was definitely kind of like pushing where we were going. But what I remember even in that, there still wasn't like okay, so now that we've done, you know, track so and so, what are you going to write about? It was still very much an organic, like, okay, I'm kicking it with the fellas at this night, and I'm gonna find out what's going on, because Tumes like doing teaching artist work at some playground with these little kids. And yeah, I think Brian, you were about to get married, or you were in the process of, like, you were engaged, or yeah. So like we were talking about your wedding and Long Division and just become a dad, and like it was very much like, okay, we kicking it, and then, you know, Brian would have a beat, or, you know, somebody would have something to say, like, oh, you know what, all right, we're gonna talk about this, and it just all kind of like came together. So yeah, it was just a very dope process and very fun.
Dope. So let's talk about the actual album title. The bandcamp description says that Moses Herman Jacobs is named after some of the central figures who helped shape New York City and San Francisco into what it resembles today. Can you talk more about who those figures are and their exact roles in helping to shape these two cities in what we resemble today? I have to say, I'm not really familiar with those figures, right? But it was really interesting that it was connected to the album. Maybe Jacques or someone else can kind of speak on this.
I can start, and then anyone else can feel free to jump in. But yeah, the name came about really, I think we're all saying there wasn't a real idea around like, hey, this is what this album is going to be about. But after like hearing everyone's tracks, like, these themes kept coming up about the city and our relationship to it, or these MCs' relationships to that city. And so originally, I think the working title that we had going was 3x3, and that was the project's name for a really long time. And even for a while, we was like, oh, maybe we'll just call it 3x3. But just like after hearing all the tracks and like really, just taking some time to really think about it, the idea was, sort of keeping with the 3x3 theme. So Robert Moses, who's a urban planner who worked for New York City, right? And he, if you see the album cover is of the Cross Bronx Expressway. I hope I'm getting the name right, the highway. But that's a famous project that Robert Moses created that pretty much split up the Bronx, right? And created like this division within the Bronx. So you had, and to really keep me honest on this, but like I think one side is like the rich side and one side is like the poor side. But eventually what it did was like it created this division within this neighborhood. And this is what he did. Like he went into neighborhoods and just completely changed them and disrupted them completely. And usually try to serve like, his rich overlords and try to really just shit on, I guess, poor city folks. That's usually the gist of it. The other dude, Justin Herman, he had the same sort of, not the same exact role, but the same sort of, well, not the same exact title, but the same sort of role in the Bay Area. And I think in LA too. Brian, you could probably explain that better than I can. But his there's a Justin Herman Plaza in San Francisco that I think they changed the name, but he pretty much had the same role where he sort of destroyed. Well, I'm trying to be subjective about it, but he pretty much destroyed a lot of what we know as that area. At least a good parts that, I guess for city folks who come from there know it as. And this is all from like the, I guess 70s, 60s era. And Jane Jacobs was the person who was like most popular for fighting against Robert Moses. And sort of really, I think the biggest project that she pushed back, or at least what she's pretty much known for, maybe I'm getting the details slightly off here. But at one point, Robert Moses was thinking about like just trucking and making a whole like highway that goes right through like the East Village. And there was a pushback against that, and that's what she's probably best known for. So so the idea was like these are three people that are central to creating or having this or shaping the city in some way. At least the most popular people around that idea. And sort of fitting that within the same theme with the album, where everything's it's three MCs, three beats, or three beats for each MC. So just trying to continue that theme, but yeah, these people had like a really central way of just really changing the city landscape and just trying to be cognizant of that in some way, and sort of bringing that back into the album, but not in a heavy-handed way, but just making sure like, hey, like this is sort of what this album. Just getting like sort of like a nudge that this is what this album sort of feels like in some way.
Wonderful. So in speaking of Jane Jacobs, the description also talks about her seminal book, The Death and Life of Great American Cities. and her vision for a city created for everybody, which instead has become one in which economic inequality and gentrification have forced us to confront the idea of home. Can you talk about how the music on the album tackles this conversation on confronting the idea of home as it relates to the challenges we see today? And anyone can go based on the question.
One thing that came up a lot in those sessions that we talked about, where we were all kind of like collaborating, interacting, via the computer. We kept talking about like this idea of homecoming, or it kept coming up. I guess, like I said, like a lot of the ideas, like we didn't set out to say, like, I mean, Jacques mentioned how we have, somewhat similar political alignment, but we didn't set out to like make some kind of like message album, like this is what we're gonna do, like Jacques said, like Moses Herman Jacobs, the title was come up with, after the fact. So I think a lot of stuff just kind of fell into place in terms of that theme emerging. And we sort of shared a little bit about our characters that we were developing as we were writing it. But our characters aren't necessarily like one thing that we never really agreed upon is that we don't refer to ourselves by name. Like none of the characters refer to themselves by name, and the characters never really interact either, but this idea, and Mikal actually summed it up pretty well last time he spoke, I believe, when he said, this idea of a return home. I forgot how you worded it already, but it's a return home that's somehow dissatisfying or heartbreaking, right? And I think like if you follow each story, even though the characters are like really different, and like it still follows that theme, and the other theme around the economic stuff, like kind of like forms around that. So it has a really natural way of coming together. And like the characters not interacting, I think almost like accentuates the themes, because then it becomes less plot driven. Like it's almost like, and you're way more of a film guy than me, but like, like Babel, like the film, it was one of those like 3 films that came out that year, where like the themes kind of emerge, and there what holds everything together. It's not plot driven at all. Whereas like a movie like Crash, it's like the characters, like the whole thing is how the plot makes the characters interact. So I don't know if that makes sense in terms of the theme emerging, but it was more of like a natural thing. It wasn't like, all right, let's do this, and we're gonna do this really political album about homecoming, and the guy's really sad because it's gentrified. Like it feels way more real to me. Like the characters, even though they're kind of out there characters in some cases, like it just feels way more natural.
Well said, well said. I want to actually talk about some of the tracks on the album, right? But I also want to start by the apparent, which you just you guys alluded to already, is the fact that each MC has solo tracks, right? There's no really, everyone is kind of shining by themselves, right? There's not more than one MC on a track. And I'm just curious to know how you guys decided on that presentation. Like to display yourself in that manner where it was just everybody. And the other dope thing is that I think you all equally have all 3 tracks each. So it's very, I want to say it sounds like it's calculated the way you guys did the structure of the album and who would be on which track, where each person would go. Like another thing that I noticed too is like you don't hear a Mikal track back to back, right? Like there's spaces in between. Like, so talk about the structure and how you guys created this presentation with who would go where and how certain people would be placed throughout the track.
I think Brian should talk to that. I have some insight, but I feel like Brian,
Sure.
Because you really like help lay down the orders of the tracks, you should speak to that more.
Yeah, sure. I can chime in. I don't remember when we made a decision to not do a group track, because I think we might have floated that around at some point. I always love like the posse cut on an album, so like I probably would have pushed for it. So I think it might have just maybe it was just the fact we weren't all together, or I don't know why, but as far as bringing it all together, yeah, it was kind of like, so we did, I'll kind of pick up where I left off, you know, in the process of things. These guys were all sending in demos to everyone. So everyone shared whatever they did throughout the whole process as songs kind of formed. And then we got to a point where it was like, and I think there was even some redos, like people would share and then we'd be like, hear other people's stuff. And then like, I want to actually, let me rewrite this. And then there was some of that happening once we were sharing each other, you know, everyone was sharing their songs. And then we just got to a point where it was like, okay, we got like, everyone felt good about 9 cuts that we had. Everyone felt good about their 3 songs. And we were kind of like spent some time with it. I think there was always pauses in between our get-togethers online. And then, yeah, once we I don't remember how, like, I think Jacques booked some studio time. And these guys were all on the East Coast at that point, either that or Tumes was like traveled out there, made it happen so that he could make the session. I couldn't make it, unfortunately. Still haven't met like some of these guys in person. Like, we always joke about it, like it's crazy. But yeah, I wish I could have made that recording session, because that was the one time that everyone could have all been in the room together. So I was the only one missing. But these guys hit the studio to lay down vocals, get some solid recordings, and that helped, you know, make sure that all the vocal parts were all sounding, you know, cohesive and good. And I'm sure it drove. I wasn't there, so you guys might want to speak on it. But I'm sure it drove the performances. You guys all being in the same room when you were recording each other's songs, and then from there, you know, I got the raw, I got all the raw stems, and I did the mixing of the individual songs, and stuff just kind of shaped even more from there. A lot of the ad libs, a lot of the DJ stuff, the cuts in there, because I'm a DJ too. So I did all the cuts as well. You know, it was a long process, and yeah, selecting like where stuff went, composing, kind of arranging the layout of the album. That's something I take a lot of pride in with all my projects, because I'm a DJ. I really think that the sequencing and the transitions from song to song are really important, and how an album plays out and how it hits the listener. So I always take that really seriously, and so I put a lot of thought into that. Yeah, I wanted to make sure that, you know, it wasn't just going to be like 3 long division tracks, 3 hired gun track, Mikal tracks, 3 Sir Tumes tracks. I wanted it to play out and have each character build on each other, to sort of shape this story, and shape, you know, this narrative. So that's, you know, so there was aesthetic choices. Like I like the way this track sounds after this one, but it was also how the characters, each song kind of plays a role in the story, and the role for each character. So it was definitely taking note of that, and trying to make sure there was this arc, kind of a story arc, even though there isn't a plot really, or as Dan was saying, you know,
got it.
That's how it came together. A lot of the interludes and the intro, the outro, that's all stuff that I pieced together after the fact, either from previously made stuff that kind of fit in, or stuff that I produced for the project to make it all kind of glue together.
I could add like just the order, not the order so much, but like the reasons I think we had 3, and I'm not exactly sure, but I know like one of my preferences as a designer is like always do things in odd numbers. So I would never say 2, I would never say 4, I would never say 5. I don't know how it happened, but maybe we all as a group decided on 3 collectively. But I know if someone said 2, I'd be like, no, we have to do 3.
3's a better number, man.
Say it again.
3's a better number. Like 2's weird. 4's weird.
For a narrative, like, you know, plays come in 3 acts, right? I mean, like, you know,
right.
Beginning.
Sorry. Yeah. So I think that's part of the reason why there was 3, right? It was, you know, beginning, middle, end. And I think that's sort of the reason why we had 3. And And yeah, just add to what Brian was saying. Yeah, he took a lot of time just to make sure that, because I remember we talked about it, about like making sure like this, making sure that the tracks blended, or just the album, how the album would feel from one track to the next. But to be honest, I don't think we even needed to have a conversation. That's just how Brian just naturally sort of works. But I just remember us like listening to the tracks. It's like, hey, you know what, like maybe sort of fidgeting around with like where the orders of the tracks were, and then coming up with an idea like, hey, maybe this is the way it goes. One thing I remember like deciding as a group was that we wouldn't have like each person's track right after the other track. So wouldn't it be, Mikal, then Tumes, long division. Like we decided like we don't want to do that. That even though these stories, as they were, I think, written, do have like a beginning, middle, and end, that we wouldn't necessarily put the tracks in that order at all, and it made it more compelling as a narrative, or just as a listening experience, not to have it in that order. So if you listen to it, you can find where that beginning, middle, end happens. But at the same time, it's not really necessary, and it just makes it a much better listening experience. And you can hear like even the way that because of Brian's great mixing and his beats, like even the way he made sure like you hear 3 songs, then there's a intermission of some sort, and then we go into the next 3 songs, and then another intermission, the next set of songs, and that's all done, at least from my understanding, it's all done on purpose, just to make sure like, hey, to give the album a real sense of continuity, but also like to give us a structure and make it a more pleasurable like listening experience. So that's something that I think there's certain things that we all agreed on, but some things that it just naturally just took shape, just because of the way we are as I think just as creative folks.
I want to just say that Brian stole the show. Production wise, like no slight at everyone else's contribution, but this project really comes alive because of his production. And I want to talk more about his back and forth in hearing the lyrics and changing things and the adjustments he made, but you really stand out. I think on face value, what people will probably remember quickly with this project is the production, right? And the overall sound that it brings. Now, Brian, I also want to say, man, I wouldn't say I'm very familiar with you, but when I was doing a little research, I was like, hold on, I know this guy. Like so for folks that might be listening, I had started an online internet radio station some years back, and you had put out a beat tape called Dissertation Volume 1. I think this was back in 2015, and I did like a little beat. Like I had these different shows, and one of the shows was like just showcasing like producers and beat guys. And I remember coming across your music and like displaying some of the 1 or 2 of the tracks from that project on there. So it was like, but I remember just how dope your beats were to begin with. So when I heard this project, it was like, oh, okay, it actually makes sense because he's just naturally gifted like that. Talk to me about, how challenging, I guess I would say, like, what was the most challenging part about doing this project for you and working with everyone? Like, what was the hardest part for you to actually get through in this project?
Well, thanks for the support over the years. I'll say first, yeah, that's cool, man. Glad you dug the dissertation thing. That's one of the projects I mentioned earlier that Jacques did the design for. Yeah, as far as challenges, I mean, I'll just say like my approach to this compared to like a project like that, it's going to be totally different. I mean, it was totally different because I'm working with vocalists, right? Like I'm working with all these other artists and really trying to do what I can to all the way from beat selection to how I'm mixing it. I'm trying to do them service that's going to have to be a priority if you're a producer, and you're working with another artist, is especially if they trust you with their art, you know, and that they're sending you stems. It's like, all right, let me make sure that, and there was a lot of feedback too, you know, like I'd play stuff, we'd play mixes back, and I got a lot of mixed feedback from these guys, you know, they're like, turn my vocals up, you know, which, you know, like you got to listen to the people you're collaborating with, and like, and just trying to make sure that I not get too, you know, being someone that's done a lot of solo stuff, instrumental stuff. I don't want to get too far into my world and abandon the ship of like this team effort that we're trying to make a good collaborative project. So that was always a challenge. But it was a welcome challenge, because especially at the time, it was like I was really excited about working with some other artists and working with some vocalists, having already had a couple instrumental projects under my belt. But the biggest challenge for me is always finishing and like knowing when to say it's done, and just especially just taking the responsibilities of mixing the album, and you know, getting all the levels right of everything. And so that's always a challenge. But I would say just the collaborative part of it was a really great challenge to have. And hopefully, you know, I did these guys justice, because they all contributed immensely to the project as well. I mean, they made it what it is.
Definitely. So I want to actually talk about some of the lyrics on the project. Tumes, you opened the project with probably my favorite song on the album, Papa Said. And I just want to clarify first before we even go into this song. Are you saying in the hook, Papa said a man was worth, or Papa said a man was work?
Work.
Okay, it's work. I'm like, I've been playing this record back over and over again. I'm like, damn, I wish I would have asked for the lyrics, because like, I don't know. I'm not sure if he's saying worth or work, but to me, it's like whichever one he says, it actually makes sense too. But can you expound on the significance of the phrase, right? Papa said a man was work, and tell us the underlying message you wanted to convey in this song.
If I remember correctly, I think when I was working on just the overall narrative of the person, I was trying to like really explore a person who I think lived a life of, you know, strict kind of rules and like kind of dogmatic ideologies a bit. So it's like, you know, someone says like, you do that, you get A by doing B, and that's the only way to do it, right? And you know, youthful people, you know, young people do whatever. They flip around, they mess around, they don't take things seriously. And you know, grown folks, you know, they work and they contribute, and you know, and so this character that I was working with was a very much of a coming of age kind of person who, you know, decided to kind of leave home and do a very like, you know, not so much going in the military. It's not like a thing of like, I don't think this person was a patriot. This was more like, all right, I need to find a thing that's going to help me contribute and be a man, right? And stuff like that. So I thought about that line as like a kind of refrain that was constantly in his head, help, you know, forming his decisions. And, you know, that's kind of what a hook is, right? Of course, a refrain is it's a constant reminder. So I built that with like the kind of the main refrain in his brain. And then all the other lyrics within it were just a kind of rumination around that and why he made those certain choices. And so forth and so on.
How much of the track had to do with, you know, real life? Like, what was there any aspects of it that, if you care to share, that dealt with reality?
You know what? I would say my own life. I would say maybe some of it emotionally, like maybe like I think definitely at that time I was like in my early 30s. I was like definitely like probably at like one of my brokest financial moments. Like I just came off of like living a life on the road, doing a lot of stuff, you know. I went to a point where financially I wasn't doing as well. So I definitely think I got attracted to a character who was dealing with it, who was dealing with what's the worth of someone at a certain age who calls himself a man but doesn't have what we associate, you know, men having, like, you know, solid home, a family, so forth and so on. So I definitely think it might have emotionally influenced my interests. I would say the actual things, nah, not really my life, but, you know, I had a lot of friends who went into the military, who left home, who came back, people that I used to be very close with when I was a kid, and that I don't really talk to no more. So some of it, I think, also was like the rumination of like people that I encountered in my life that I don't have relationships with, and me trying to process what I may think they're going through writing songs. I wouldn't say any of it was autobiographical or anything like that. It definitely was a character. You know, it was definitely like me constructing a character, writing character, right? But of course, I think, you know, as I'm a filmmaker, and I come as an actor. Your interest in character, even if it's not yourself, comes from an emotional place of you know, you're interested in that emotionally. So I was interested in emotionally, but I don't think any of the actual details really were my life at all.
Wow, man. I'm so glad that you spoke on that, because in my listening, it felt so real. And if you are into film, then you did a really good job portraying something that that came across real. So I also want to talk a little bit more about this track, because I mean, it's one of the most memorable tracks on the album for me, and it just really just grabs me. And it's the second track, the first track where we actually hear Emcee rapping. Now, Brian, there's some brief singing ad libs by a woman on the hook of the song. Is this actually a vocal sample or an actual singer? And it sounds like she's saying "be be." Oh, Ben, I don't know if I'm saying the right thing. But like, what is she saying? Talk to me about this, because this subtle vocal ad lib makes a major impact on the song. And I think it really talks about, it really speaks to your brilliance as a producer.
I mean, it's a sample. That's all the details I'm gonna give on that. But yeah, it's a chop, you know, it's something I chopped out of something. And I think I was attracted to the sound of it because this is something that was in the track. So this isn't something that was added on later. So that was handed over to Tumes when he, you know, picked that beat and when he wrote to it and all that. So that could have, you know, I can't really say as far as like what it contributed to things lyrically, or to me, it's just a sound. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
I when I'm working on stuff musically, you know, sometimes there's lyrical elements, and there'll be some themes based on like a vocal sample or something. But this one was, you know, I don't even know what she was saying. It might have been a different language, but that's the only clue I'm going to give you as to the source. But yeah, it's just, you know, I'm attracted to how sounds come together, and that, and I do a lot of sampling. I use a lot of records, and I'm really interested in taking a lot of different sources and finding some common ground where they just all come together in a way that's beautiful to me, and in hopes that it's going to resonate with somebody out there.
How did you know where exactly to layer this sound? Like it just seems like it's placed in the right place, like in between the hook. Like, did you do this after you got the vocals from
No.
Tumes?
No, I was in there. Yeah, this is all part of the
Nice.
instrumental piece itself. Yeah. So sometimes, I mean, I do have like choruses and verse sections in mind when I'm when I'm producing. I can get a little bit, I try to get away from that structure because I feel like it is a little bit, we get pigeonholed into that. Like we don't always have to stick to the usual format, but I do tend to like gravitate towards that sometimes when I'm producing stuff, when I'm making beats. And so this was one of those tracks where as it came together, I'm like, okay, this is going to be like this chorus section, and then this is going to be the verse section, you know, build it up a bit, break it down, make space for the vocalist. So that you know, there's that. As far as the placement of that sample, it's just, you know, I like upbeats, offbeats, put it in a place that might be a little unexpected to the ear and like play off the rhythm a little bit. That's always, you know, something I play with.
Dope. So this next question is for Mikal. Your song Off the Block, in the hook, you say, I've been around the block. Now I'm pushing off the block. So I'm moving past the block. They want to stop my shot. What inspired you to tap into this theme dealing with the block?
So, you know, as you've heard from everyone, you know, each of us kind of created a character and a persona. And for me, the story, actually, the way it was sequenced was in the reverse, ironically enough. So there's Icon, I Am, and the block. And basically the character that I'm utilizing in the song, it's basically him returning after being an icon. So it's this sort of thing that I kind of dealt with, similar to what Tumes was saying. It's not autobiographical per se, but I kind of tapped into a different part of my life, leaving New Jersey and coming to Brooklyn, and coming from a small town and trying to kind of like make my name. But I sort of inverted it because it was basically this person that was kind of failing and returning having failed. Wasn't as successful. And that was in my younger years, that was definitely a fear of mine, that I would have to go back. So I definitely personified that. But I also, you know, teaching a lot of the young people, I'm also an educator like Tumes, and dealing with a lot of young people that are constantly trying to make a name for themselves, trying to kind of find a way, not necessarily to leave their block, but to shine on it. And that's kind of was the inspiration around the hook, like those kind of like two different ideas. And I wanted something that was going to reflect the mentality. All of the things that I'm doing in the songs are definitely sort of like a psychological kind of profile. So I'm trying to get you to get inside of, or see inside of the head of the character. So that the chorus was really about those two kind of competing ideas to kind of set you up to the mentality of someone who was basically just trying to make it and missed. And now they're back to where, you know, they started, and it's not where they want to be. And it was sort of me kind of like tapping into that part of that feeling that I had coming here to New York, but then also just kind of in conversation with a lot of the young people, you know, working with high school students primarily, and just sort of their aspirations, and looking and wanting to be known, seen, you know, blow up. You know, not all of them. I'm not saying that all of my students are trying to, but those are some of the things in some of the spaces that I worked in. You know, that was sort of a mentality that they had to kind of show out and be seen and be known. So that's kind of what kind of brought me to bringing up in that hook, but it also was to help me sort of kind of set you up for the mentality of the character that you were going to experience when you were listening to the verses.
Wonderful. Well said. So I want to move to the next song. As you guys probably will see, I'm going through like track by track, right? Like I'm giving y'all each an opportunity to build.
I gotta say, this is impressive, man. You definitely, you know, peeped the record for real. This
Seriously, man. I'm like, wow, thank you.
Indeed. So, Long Division, your song Candles. The level of lyricism and clever wordplay is high on this track. I mean, I was blown away like of how much was happening on this track, and also some of your other tracks on the album too. Can you briefly explain though what the track is about, like in your briefest, explanation?
Sure. Well,
how it relates to the overarching theme of the project? Well, I know you said it's kind of loosely based, but kind of talk about what the track is about.
Well, okay. The track is basically a semi tongue-in-cheek kind of like. I mean, the narrative of the track is this guy is kind of like. I mean, it's loosely based on me. The character is a little bit more based on me than probably Tumes' character, but it's almost like kind of like a little self-effacing. I mean, you guys have known me for a long time, so like the self-deprecating humor is kind of part of my thing. But he's kind of fantasizing. He's working some kind of regular job, or he's in urban life, and he's drawing a cityscape. I'm also a visual artist, so he's drawing, and he starts his mind starts wandering to this other kind of life that's a little bit more bucolic and out in the rural countryside, and then it just sort of like evolves into him beginning to like practice the occult and like getting really into like that side of things. But that's something that I've researched since I was a kid. I mean, I'm not it's not like my belief system necessarily. It's just something I've researched, whether researching different cults or one of my favorite books was called The Occult by Colin Wilson. So I drew a lot from that book, and just kind of drawing from these references and kind of like the idea of this like daydream kind of spinning out for this character. And then I kind of had I kind of knew that Brian and Jacques were going to mess around with the order a lot, so I tried to make it as modular as I could. So my character ended up kind of in the he kind of it's kind of like a tragic ending, but it could have gone the other way. I mean, he could have sort of started out from that point of where he is in Sunshine, where he he's just, his life is just he's living in a basement and he's just depressed about everything. But it was basically like these three different kind of periods for this character, like these different like periods in life. I was almost thinking like like Dr. Manhattan from Watchmen, right? He can kind of like move into like time. He recognizes that time is almost like an illusion or something. He's like, I see Tumes. The character, like he can kind of move into these different like time. Everything exists all at once, right? In some way, right? In some kind of like so the idea, like in one phase of this guy's life, he got really into hedonism and the occult, and then in the other song, it was almost like he was trying to kind of like make a difference. Like he still had this kind of like anti-establishment persona, but he sort of found a groove where he felt like he was kind of like making a difference in society, or he felt like there was some kind of hope of collective action. I've been involved in activism in some way for a long time, but I don't call myself an activist necessarily, but I drew from some of my experiences doing that for that one. And then Sunshine is the one where it's just kind of like his total dissolution as a character. So that first one, the super syncopated style, I mean, that was kind of just styling a little bit. I almost feel like, I hate to say this because I love the album so much, but I kind of wish this had come out before Death and the Magician, the new Rome Streets joint, because he has all these tarot references. And I felt like at the time I was like, yo, nobody's talking about the tarot. So I was a little bit like, oh no, because I saw immediately like all the tarot stuff, you know what I mean, in the Rome Streets album. I don't know if you guys have heard with DJ Muggs, but yeah. Anyway, that's kind of where that came from, which is this kind of like wild out daydream that led into this, kind of like nightmare vision of the occult.
Yeah, it's one of those tracks that, the way the album flows up until that point, it kind of throws you off guard, like, like where did this come from, But your level of lyricism is so like complex, right? That I think I paid attention more to just the verbal onslaught of wordplay, that was happening there. And then when you actually kind of think about what the song is about, you're like, oh wow, like he took it there as well. Like, so like I said, I was telling Mikal earlier that I didn't realize how layered this actual album is in terms of the lyrics. Like, it's very dense. There's a lot going on. And to a degree, I guess this is a good thing. But Brian's production almost, like it almost overshadows that, right? Like it's so fun. Like the production is so fun. You're like, oh shit, you didn't realize that so much is going on lyrically. So you guys offer, a lot, collectively in your unique contributions. So let's talk about the next song. I believe it's called Nobody's Help. The next rap song on there, and it's by Tumes, right? Can you talk briefly on what inspired this track and how sometimes doing it alone can sometimes have a negative effect on well-being?
Well, I mean, that's actually one from Brian, because Brian gave that beat and the hook was there, right? And this is where my memory fails me. I know that was probably one of the beats that Brian gave me early that I was like, I'm gonna take this one, right? I just liked it. I liked the groove. The hook was there.
It just sounded like an Tumes beat. That was one of the ones I was like, he's gotta slay this shit.
He's gotta take this one.
Sorry.
Imagine if I was like, yeah, I don't like that one. You'd be like, what?
I'd be
right.
Like,
damn. But I remember, like, I can't remember if that like jump started the kind of overall concept, but I think it helped because whether or not, it doesn't really matter, where it fits in the kind of thing of like the first song with the, the man is work and this kind of like, individualist attitude. And I think, now that I think more, I probably like do someone who's completely the opposite. Like, I'm an individualist. I'm a collective person. I'm into friendship. I'm into working in groups. I'm a collectivist politically. And this is a person about solo things, going as a complete individual, the kind of rise of the individual. And I think you asked about how does this plague? I mean, this person that I was writing, I mean, clearly just has angst about all this stuff, right? That's kind of what I wanted to do when I added those lyrics to the chorus, just like paint a thing where this is just a person who, yeah, he's saying that, but is that really true? Like if you listen to him, actually what he's talking about, he doesn't seem very happy, and the things that makes him feel good is like guns and going to war. Like, how is that good? So, and it's also funny, and I think this influenced it. When I just moved to LA, the Christopher Dorner thing had happened. Remember that? And that that literally had happened about a week or two before I had moved to actually, I got to LA and they were looking for him. And I remember I was like crazy reading about it. And I'm almost positive that influenced this, like on a major level. Like the Christopher Dorner thing, I was just like, I couldn't stop reading. I was like, this is crazy. So I feel like some of that got in there a little bit too.
Got it. So I'm gonna jump back to Long Division on the track Galaxy Rays, which he lyrically shines on that as well. You have a line where you say, ever since the sorcerer's apprentice left the nemesis defenseless, the efforts have been registered as senseless. When I heard that, I was like, shit, what is going on here? Like the onslaught of wordplay, man. And you got another line before that. I mean, like, I literally had to like play it over multiple times just to get what you were saying. So I just wanted to shout you out on that. Just giving an example of your clever wordplay.
Thank you.
Tell me how this idea of Galaxy Rays relates to what your lyrics embody on the track.
Okay, sure. Well, I always was a fan of that song. The sample is from, I hope this is okay if I say this sample because it's not like a crate digger thing, Brian, but it's from a song off of Ultramagnetic Emcees, Four Horsemen. I believe the song, I actually forget the name of the song right now. Godfather Don is on it too, but he says he's in his own world. I think I kind of zeroed in on that, and then the idea of him being in his own world and drawing from that as like almost a superpower, I guess. I don't want to talk too much about superpowers because I know it's kind of played out in hip hop to talk about yourself like a superhero, but the idea of kind of drawing from your own, personal reserves of being in your own world, and that being, the kind of like energy that you project. Whereas in the other two kind of segments of the album, he's either, kind of in this hedonistic space, or he's, down on his luck. In this place, he's really, kind of like, based and just, knows what he wants and knows what he wants to do and feels like he's actually accomplishing it. It's the more, genuinely positive. I mean, there's a couple, it's not necessarily, shiny, happy, positive, but, the characters he's in a pretty good place in that song. You know what I mean? So the galaxy rays, I guess, I never thought about it consciously, but I guess the galaxy rays are this energy that he's drawing from his own personal reserves and, projecting out into the world to change it for the better, I guess.
Nice.
At least how he sees it as better.
Yeah. I'm actually glad you broke that down, because when you listen to I think it's in the hook, you say, Mom, I'm in my own world. I'm not sure if I'm saying it the right way, but I do hear the own world being repeated. And I figured that was kind of the concept, but I always like to ask the artists when I get them on the show, because you guys can explain the meaning behind y'all lyrics the best. So let's jump to another track from Mikal. This track is called I Am, which really, really has a dope beat and drum presence to it. Brian, there you go again, just rocking out with the powerful sounds. In the hook, Mikal, you say, I am falling and I am rising repeatedly. And the phrases are sort of juxtaposed really neatly. So you could kind of hear like, I am rising, and then you hear like, I am falling, like a echo in the background, and then, vice versa. It kind of repeats like that. Can you explain why it was important for you to express these two phrases throughout the song? I am rising and falling.
Yeah, for sure. And I have to get some shout outs to Log Division again on his tracks, because he is the rhyme pattern rhyme scheme king. He's definitely skilling it out. That's ridiculous. I also feel like there's a vocal ad lib by Tumes saying "powerful" that, if I remember, was an inside joke we had for something in the Zoom. There was some inside joke, and it like made it on the record. So when you hear Galaxy Rays, powerful. Like there was some. I forget what the inside joke was, but that was one of the jokes in the Google Hangout that made it on the record.
Of being just this like powerful, like a workout video. I don't know.
There was something, yeah, but it was like it would pop up here and there in the meetings, like if Tumes was saying.
I totally forgot about that.
You know what I mean? Yeah, you're right. And it ended on the record.
That was the one thing. Like there wasn't a group song, but you guys were all in the studio when you recorded that, and from what I heard, you guys all hopped on for that section. Well, there was vocal parts for each one of you. I mixed them together. Yeah, you guys. That was all of you guys saying that.
Yeah, I think that was like the running joke. Yeah,
that was the only piece in the album where it was like all the vocalists came together for that one word.
This probably won't come up again, but I remember there was a line that you were going to take out of Mikal, and you ended up using it. And when I heard it on the album, I was like, oh my god, I'm so glad he left it. It was the line about this being overheard after work, because I thought that line was so dope, because it's kind of like jumps out of the song and kind of puts the whole thing in another perspective, and also like politically ties the whole thing to working life, which I think is kind of cool too. Anyway, I don't want to steal your shot.
No, it's dope. I mean, you ended up with a monster, Cril, because we literally have not had a chance to actually like savor this record together since we finished it. So it's literally like the first time we're like, yo, what do we make? But about the chorus, the idea in the song was his juxtaposition of what the city was doing. So this is kind of the track where I'm really sort of trying to personify the city's like, I am a genius insidious inside a hideous city that disfigures pretty dreams, mere moments that master bitter. So there's parts of the song where it's this kind of struggle between, am I going to persevere or am I going to basically just kind of fall by the wayside. So again, I was trying to use the hook to kind of embody that idea simply enough, because I knew that the verses were very cerebral. Like it was, and that's why I appreciate you bringing us on, Cril, and the way you've treated the record, because like I think all of us as the MCs especially, we're lyricists. We love lyrics. We love like the craft of storytelling. So I feel like we left people breadcrumbs, but you had to sit and read the book. You know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't like you're going to sit here and just look at the cover and be like, oh, that's cool, and know what it was about. You kind of had to really sit and read the book. You might even have to read the epilogue. You know what I'm saying? Like, to get it. But you're going to appreciate it if you did that. So it's dope, like, to see that you've done that, because it really allows. But because of that, I was really trying to, in the hooks, give that little breadcrumb to sort of give you an idea, like, this might be sort of the idea of what he's trying to kind of get at, to maybe make you want to sit down and read the book a little bit more, because you kind of got hooked in with sort of like the idea. But yeah, that was, and even with the, you know, and this is where Brian was really coming in as a producer, just like some of the ideas about what to do with the ad-libs and things like that with the hooks. And just to kind of like maximize some of that effect. So, you know, even just me sort of, I am rising, just as a juxtaposition, just sort of kind of having like that omnipotent or that omniscient voice that you're hearing, just to sort of like accentuate that idea of just, I mean, we've all kind of been in that space, I feel, where you're just like inside your head, you're like, am I going to make it? Am I not? You know, am I good enough? Am I great? Am I not? So it's trying to kind of encapsulate all of that in the hook, so that when you're listening to the lyrics, when you're listening to the verses rather, you kind of get a sense like, okay, maybe that's the gist of what this is about, and you can kind of get it.
I think that's perfect. I'm so glad that you did that, because in listening to the album, I mean, there's so much to uncover, like lyrically, right? But I think, like you said, the hook helps me to get a fuller understanding of what each track is generally about. I got a lyric for you. You say on that same track, I am a chosen few will stay colder than frozen dew in a frost. You're lost if you can't cover the cost of clues. Are you saying clues? I'm not sure, but I want you to kind of explain that line, because as a person that is into lyrics myself, I really like to decipher lyrics, and I just wanted to kind of figure out what you meant by that line.
Yeah, for sure. It kind of is set up a little bit before that. Beware of what omens do. Maybe I could reign if I knew what the Romans knew. So it's the idea of maybe if I was going to kind of play by sort of the standards, play by the industry rules, play by the elites rules, maybe I wouldn't end up in this situation. So, you know, a chosen few will stay colder than frozen dew in the frost. So the idea of cold just being like, yeah, if you're going to get dipped out, if you're going to be fresh, cold in the frozen dew in the frost, you lost if you can't cover the cost of clues. So really, it's like, if you don't have the ability to get that inside information, whatever it is, that's what's going to end up happening to you. So it plays, actually, you have to go maybe like 2 lines back. I mean, you don't really have to, but it's feeding into this whole idea of like, why can't I get ahead? Well, maybe if I was tapped into these people that were the betters, or the elite, or the ones that are the winners, maybe I could. But if I don't have that, then I'm going to end up kind of losing out. So, you know, just a lot of wordplay, trying to say things, but say it in a way that, it's poetic, it's lyrical, and again, it's one of those things where it's like, you catch it because it sounds, I mean, like, I'm a big fan of people like Ghostface, Nas, Pharoah Monch. Those are the people that I kind of grew up on, positive news. So I'm trying to say things and be very like concrete, but at the same time be very abstract. I want to create pictures with what I'm saying, and hook you that way, and get you to see something, and kind of almost like put them like a pictogram together, like, oh, okay, that's what that means. That's wow. And obviously when you have the production to also kind of just keep you there, it's just the whole package of it.
Another really interesting line of yours, you on that same track, you say, "If we believe in magic, then we can retrieve the stars. I'm not looking at a face, but for updating my status." I thought that was a little clever way of, using face and status, with social media. Was that really what you were trying to do with that line?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Got it. That was dope.
Yeah.
That was dope.
Thank you.
Indeed, indeed. So let's talk about Sunshine, which is the track another track that Long Division, solos in. I have a specific question about this track. Really dope beat again, Professor Brian. But when you listen to the song Long Division, it's talking about returning to a city that you feel sad about, or that the character feels sad about. How does sunshine exist in a song that's so sad? Because like I'm listening to it and I'm like, where's the sunshine other than the chick saying sunshine, right?
Right.
Break down like why y'all chose to go with this title Sunshine with a song like this.
Yeah. So the chorus, and I don't know if you're familiar with what we were drawn from for that. It's from Roy Ayers' "Everybody Loves the Sunshine," which
Right.
Common Sense, as he was known at the time, famously sampled for what's the name of that song, guys? Come on. My life,
That's Sunshine. That is Sunshine. Roy Ayers, Sunshine.
In the prime of my life. That's Sunshine. I didn't realize
Sunshine.
that.
Yeah,
But he doesn't actually say sunshine in the song, right? Or he doesn't include
He
that
does.
part.
My life, my life in the sunshine.
Tons of cats have sampled that song, but for the record, we didn't sample that song.
So yeah, first of all,
Yo, don't blow a bright spot, yo.
I'm not sure where it came from, but that's
Oh, we didn't sample it though. We didn't.
From a whole other source that we're not going to divulge. But yeah, when Brian told me that like blew my mind, like how he put that together, because I think I just sang it in like this really whack fashion in the demo, and then Brian like put it all together. I was like, maybe you can cut in the record or do some Roy Ayers shit.
But on that note, I did want to touch on that because Dan was the one that he had the hooks for all of his songs. Like he had samples laid out, and he was like, "Yo, this one, either he was singing it already, like in just like a demo form, or he was." And then sometimes like I'd have to figure out what, like he would have like some hooks. I'm like, those are samples, right? And then he'd let me know the sources.
Yeah.
And then I'd like dig up. I'd be like, all right, let me go find that record, and then I dig up the samples, and then I'd cut it up, But he definitely came with the concepts on the hooks for his songs, like, and a lot of the samples that like I had to like find them, or he provided a few of them, and then I did my thing with them. Yeah, but sorry to distract, but I didn't want to.
No, honestly, I wanted to bring that's a very generous way of putting it. I felt like I was being a pain in the ass because it's like, I'm kind of like I'm like, hey, can you sample this part when that's kind of like but you were so accommodating, and you actually like would like take what I suggested and then just like flip it and make it so much doper. Like
there's nothing wrong with a good idea, man. I'll take it.
Well,
I'll run with it.
Anyway, I thought like honestly, for a producer to be that accommodating, I mean, it was like unbelievable. But I mean, the idea of it was like an ironic thing, right? It's like so the other samples from Prodigy. From I think it's from his verse from Temperatures Rising, where he's kind of like Temperatures Rising is like a crime song where the main character is in jail. One of the characters is in jail and the other one's writing him a letter, and he keeps retracing the steps and going back and thinking about how the crime went down, and he wished that it didn't. So he's like, damn, why the situation go down like that? So I took that line and like applied it to like a more instead of like talking about one specific incident, like just his whole life, right? So he's like, what the fuck, and there's kind of vague references to what might have happened, but I'm not like really necessarily too specific about it. And the idea of sunshine is just super ironic. It's just the idea, everybody loves the sunshine. I mean, if you ever hear that Roy Ayers song, it's like one of the closest things to like audio bliss that I can like think of. So the idea of like him, this really dark song, and then the hook he's saying, I remember seeing a woman who was obviously really down on her luck, and she was outside of a subway station, and she just all of a sudden was just like, everybody have a really nice day, like really sarcastically, and it just really always stuck with me. You know what I mean? It's almost like that. But yeah, that's where that came from.
in the song you reference a lady while you're sitting at a fountain or something. Is that the same lady? Is that the same concept? You say, I can't remember the line, but you say like she's.
Well, I say something about my landlady at the end.
Yes.
But the part about sitting by a fountain, I actually say I take a seat by a fountain. I think I was picturing a fountain in New Rochelle where I grew up, where a lot of kind of drifters and stuff would hang. But he says, somebody get me off this magic mountain. And Magic Mountain is a book by Thomas Mann that's kind of famously about mental illness. So that's where like fountain ties to Magic Mountain. Yeah, the landlady, I just had this idea of like, just like my landlady's fucking with me, for no reason. Like, I just creating this character who kind of lives in a basement and is just kind of really down on his luck. I don't know if did I make a reference to a failed relationship? I might have. I mean, I was kind of just pulling out all the stops. And if I just might, that song, right? We were almost out of studio time, and our engineer was like, we gotta leave right at 5 because he had other commitments and things. And so I was not a new father. Mikal, you said earlier, like, I just become a dad. I was about to become a dad. In fact, I thought my wife was gonna like go into labor at any minute while we were in the studio. So it was like we only got like 2 minutes left. Like, should we just leave it for next time? And I was like, yo, I don't know. My wife's about to have a baby. Like, I don't know next time I'll be able to come out here and do this. I was like, fuck it. Like, we gotta just get it done. So I think that was one take, like, right? Because we just had to just do it. And I don't know if I would have been able to do it quite as well if I hadn't had that pressure. So, so that was just something I always remember as, part of the session was getting that in there.
One take, Dan.
Well, just for that, not always one take. Not one. Just that one time.
So, Brian, I gotta say, man, when you listen to the lyrics on the album, the subject matter is really deep and sometimes sad, but your beats are, for the most part, really upbeat. And for the casual listener, I think they're getting a really joyful vibe in terms of the overall production on the album. Were you aware of what the subject matter in the lyrics were going to be ahead of making beats? Like, did you plan to just be like, you know what? Despite the deep stuff they're going to be talking about, I'm going to just make these upbeat beats. I mean, I'm just curious to know how much you knew in terms of this, the angle you were going to contribute the actual production in terms of the feel or the vibe of the album, sound wise.
Yeah, I mean, that's cool to hear that that's the vibe you pick up. And like, I don't always try to make something upbeat and happy necessarily. And I think that some of these cuts for me, like, they go a little deeper, like, to me, like when I hear like some of the darker places a little bit. But I still, I guess I always, like, it could be dark, but it's still, it's got to make your head bop, and it's got to make you want to move. So like the funk's got to be in there, which there's always, funk is a fun music. It's about dance, it's about party vibes. So like that's going to be in there no matter what. It doesn't matter if it's a moody track. It doesn't matter if it's a happy song or like a dance cut or whatever. Like, I'm always going to have that in there. So maybe that's what you're picking up on. I hope it sounds like.
I meant to say funk, actually, because that's what I noticed about the tracks too. It's very funky. And I'm not saying every track is like that, but the majority of the tracks, like, I mean,
that's the backbone, like, it's gonna be there, no matter what the song's about. Like, there's got to be, it doesn't always have to be funky, but that's like part of my DNA musically, like what I'm bred on. So there's that. But yeah, like I definitely, I mean, I had the characters in mind. We had little story bits in mind. I knew it was going to go to some deep places, but that doesn't mean that it has to be like depressing sounding, So we're gonna like keep it funky, and we're gonna make it entertaining at the same time. I mean, when you say like some of it, like the beats might detract from the lyrics a little, I'm like, oh, I didn't do my job, but I think it's just, that's also attests to the, that speaks to these MCs and like the level of lyricism there. Like maybe after a few listens, you start to like, then you sink in a little bit and you're like, oh wait, like what's this about? It makes you want to, that's something that I aspire to when I make an album. Hopefully it's something that hits on the, the level of like moving your neck and moving your body a little bit. And then as you pay a little more attention, hopefully you get repeated listens, and it makes you enjoy it over time.
I think it's worthy to note that some of the dopest records are records that catch you off guard, right? In terms of the depth of what's going on lyrically. And because your beats are so, particularly on this project, right? And I know that's kind of your style is funky anyway, in general. But like in regards to this project, like it's so easy on the listener, So I and this is my perspective. I don't know if everyone shares this, but I think it's so easy on the listener, and it really requires you to listen to what's happening lyrically. But it pulls you in enough. It's not like it's dark and boring that now you don't even get a chance to to pay attention to the lyrics, right? Like it brings you in just enough. It brings the listener in just enough to say, okay, let me listen further because I like what I'm hearing initially. I don't know if that makes sense, but so it's not
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. That sounds, that's all right. We did our job.
Wonderful. So let's jump to another track. And I know I have you guys for a little bit. So if you guys if anyone has to jump off, I totally understand. But if you guys can still rock with me, I appreciate it. So the other track that I want to talk about is Icon. And I think this is Mikal, right? You did Icon. Why'd you choose to well, let me actually move from that. Let's talk about Icon itself. My viewpoint on the word icon was always seen as this image that one looked up to, right? It could be a person or something, of inspiration. But on the hook, you say, Mikal, that do you have what it takes to be an icon? Know your face in the dark or when the light's on. Can you explain the way in which you wanted to exemplify the notion of an icon in this particular track?
Yeah, honestly, what you described, your definition of icon is what I was trying to go for. And it's funny. So like, was trying to stay away from cliche, tracks. I know Dan was talking about a little earlier, like, personifying yourself as a superhero and rap's kind of played out. And similarly, the whole kind of braggadocious rap verse is sort of like everyone does it. I've got a million of them from like 15 years ago when I was a younger MC. So it was sort of like, well, how could I kind of do that and the character so that it felt different? So like Icon's kind of me sort of trying to do a braggadocious track through the character. So using that as kind of the personification. So like that's my one song that I'm sort of like undercover, kind of like trying to skill out on some like I'm super nice, but it's the character, and it's really sort of fitting into this sort of like trilogy of. So and it's funny. It's kind of like Brian. I don't know if he did it on purpose, but it was almost like he did like the Kendrick Damn thing, where it's like he took the story and he actually put it in the reverse. So the song that you hear first, Off the Block, is kind of the end of the arc of my character. So by the time you hear Icon, that's really the start of the story, where it's just like I'm the baddest, I'm the icon. That's what I'm striving to be. But by the time it's Off the Block, it's like I came back and I'm not. So yeah, it really is supposed to be sort of embodying that definition with the character and with the song.
Got it. Where does I Am fall then? Like, can you give me the order?
Sure, for sure. So it's actually, I
For your
take that
character.
back. It's actually, Icon would have been, in my mind when I was doing it, Icon was basically the start. Off the Block is technically the middle.
Okay,
And then I Am is sort of kind of like the parable of it all.
it makes sense.
Yeah.
That order actually makes sense.
Yeah.
That's why I love being able to talk to the artist directly, because I wouldn't have, I mean, I don't know if I would have been able to figure that out on my own, right?
Yeah.
But it gives me further appreciation for the art and what you guys intended.
Yeah.
So
But
that
the interesting thing though is that even though they're not necessarily in like the story order, you don't have to put them in the order to sort of like get what the thing is. That was almost more for me. Like I was like, this is, if I was writing the story in like a linear sense, that's how it would go. But yeah, they kind of can stand and still sort of like give you an idea of the narrative in it.
awesome. So we have made it to the last Emcee track on the album, entitled Nostalgia. And I have to say, Brian, this track reminds me of the last track on the Reflection Eternal album, Train of Thought. Talib Kweli and High Tech, the track called Expansion Outro. I don't know if you guys remember that track, but that was such a powerful track. And it just, I mean, I listened to both tracks, kind of comparing them. They don't sound exactly the same, but like when I heard it, I was like, wow, this sound like something classic I've heard before. And I think it was really dope that you chose to kind of close out the album with that track, even though I know there's one more track that's like a solo instrumental at the end. But talk to me about what inspired the sound direction for the track Nostalgia.
Yeah, I'll have to dial it back for that the High Tech reference. I know I've heard that. I'm familiar with the album, but it's been a while, so
Yeah.
can't say that influenced it directly. But I got my influences, and I'd say there's definitely some, like, I try to use the Wu-Tang reference, different chambers of my style, and that was I'll be open. Like that was definitely more like, for me, like more of like a Pete Rock kind of angle as far as like the approach to the samples and the feel of it. Not like I have those intentions when I'm making something at all. Like it's not like I'm gonna make a RZA kind of beat, or I'm gonna make it like a Pete Rock style beat. But like those influences come through for sure, like the things you grew up on, and I try to remain open to all those spirits and things when I'm putting stuff together. So yeah, that one, when I listen back now, I'm like, oh man, that's kind of like the mode I was in, apparently, for whatever reason. But yeah, just it's got some jazz samples in there, the piano, and like mix of the funk with the way that the drums are chopped up, and then the bass is a chopped up sample also. Just layering things, making them fit in, and then a lot of layers of horns and things that kind of went in on top of that piano sample. So that piano riff, the way it was chopped up, that became like the bass, and then I just layering on top and kind of like building. And then I had a friend of mine, Marcus Stevens, came in, and he laid some saxophone live over that one, which added a lot to the track, I feel like. And we used that kind of in between vocal parts, sort of playing off each other, is almost like trying to create the vibe like they were in the room together, performing together and playing off of each other. But they weren't. I mean, those were all separate sessions. But when I pull in pieces like that, like whether it's different musicians that recorded at different times, or different samples that I took from different records that were recorded years apart in different parts of the world, like my vision, my goal is always to like create a cohesive piece and try to make it feel natural. Like I like to try to make things sound like this is a band maybe like performing, or this is a group of musicians in my mind in some weird universe, like actually like creating this track. So that's kind of a little bit of insight on how that came together for me.
Dope. When I think about it, like the first track that Tumes starts with, and then that last track, that last MC track, Nostalgia, like those two tracks really open and close the album really well, because the sound is very soulful, and it's a little bit, you don't really hear like the funk that you hear in most of the other tracks, but it the sequencing just works, because it's, to me, it's placed in the right place. So big ups to you on that. So Mtume, I wanted to ask you about that track, right? On Nostalgia, you say, you have a line where you say, "Far from perfect, but perfection nonetheless gave me my breath and the soul I possess." Far from perfect, but perfection nonetheless gave me my breath and the soul I possess. Can you explain further how perfection nonetheless had an impact on you or on the character?
What I would say, like I think one of the things that I was also exploring right in it was, like, I'm a firm believer in, your personality and the traits that you have are formed by your environment. So who you are is truly going to be formed by that. So, I grew up in New York City. I did not grow up in a in a perfect environment, and I grew up in an environment with a lot of, poverty and hate but it's made me who I am. You know what I'm saying? And I think you gotta love who you are, you know what I'm saying, and love who you've become. So, that's just the deal. That's like the card you're dealt. It's perfect because that's who you became, even though it's an imperfect place. So I say there's perfection and imperfection. So it's like, so it's a contradiction. Like there is no perfection, yet there's all perfection. It's kind of what I was trying to play with there. And I guess with the character in that moment, as he's kind of looking back at the kind of all of the things that helped build him from the good and the bad, and he's kind of like, getting into settling into who he is. It's just kind of saying that, yeah, I mean, if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be doing this, and if he's truly satisfied with who he is at this moment, then he has to respect that.
Dope. Thank you for breaking that down. Now, I guess this next question, as we, get ready to close out the interview, would go to Jacques. I didn't forget you, Jacques. I know you've been kind of in the cut. But as I understand, the proceeds from the album sales are being donated to the grassroots organization Equality for Flatbush. Can you talk about the importance of this organization and why you chose for the proceeds to be donated to them?
Yeah, I worked with this organization in the past. I did some work for them, but like what really makes this org like really special is, like, one, it's a grassroots organization, so it's not like you're donating to some like big like mega nonprofit / corporation, right? Whereas like, oh, you give like $20, but they're getting like $1 million from Ford Foundation and all these other places, right? This is a grassroots organization where it's like people from the neighborhood actually helping people in that neighborhood, right? So that's a really special group of people just trying to just help other people, right, in the neighborhood, helping them to keep their homes, fighting their landlords so they could keep their homes, even fighting the city when need be to keep people in their homes and just provide them with some sort of safety and protection to keep them in their homes. So this org's been around for a bit now. So the person who runs it, it's a really dope dude who I worked with, like I said, in the past. I think it's really special, and I think the one thing I'm sort of cognizant of is, like, when we're we're doing these projects and trying to help people, but like how we help. I just think it's powerful, like to make sure that we're helping groups that are really trying to help us, right? So like it's for us by us, but it's really important that that we try to sort of fuel these smaller nonprofits or organizations that are just really trying to do the grassroots work and doing the dirty work that not too many other people will take the time to actually do.
Wonderful, wonderful. Can you kind of share what you would hope listeners of this project to take away? Like if there was one cohesive understanding you would want people to get from this project, what would you share?
I'm like the wrong person to ask that question to because I just feel there's so many parts, right? Like you like voiced a lot of it, right? Like you understand that's layered. Like I don't want someone to walk away thinking like it's just one quick listen, right? This thing is like really layered, and you can hear like the craft that Brian takes to do his work. You can hear the craftsmanship that Tumes, Mikal, Long Division, all of them like do to just to craft like these pieces. And I not that I sat there exactly with them, but I was there enough to know like how much how much perfectionist they can be, and I mean that in a very I guess flattering way. I don't even mean to be in a negative way. They work hard at it, and one of the cool things that I noticed, I don't know if they did, maybe they did, is and Brian mentioned it, and some other people mentioned it. You hear someone would make a rhyme, and then you can feel like, oh, the competitive spirit sort of got like ramped. Like, oh yeah, let me work on this and let me start moving on this, or just like let me try to make my other shit like just that much tighter. And it's a special album to me because a lot of things were happening at the time, right? And they've also mentioned it in slightly, but I think all our lives were in this state of like flux, or some changes like happening. Like in Tumes I forgot that. I only remember today in Tumes that you were actually in Spain. I was like, wait, Tumes was in fucking Spain, and then he was in LA. I forgot that you were even in LA that period. I just remember that you weren't here, like you were in New York. Mikal, I think, I'm not gonna put you on the spot, but I know you were going through some shit. Dan was about to have a kid, so like Dan was like going through this whole thing, like, like just, having a kid's a big thing. Brian was about to get married. I was probably the only person like maybe not going through some deep shit, but like eventually when the album like hit, or when we were trying to make it, then I got through my own shit to go through. And I was like, fuck. And that's what brought me to LA and like, and everything. Right. But it's a special album because I think we all like, we all went through this, and I think like you could hear it in the rhymes where there's something more than just like we're just people just putting pen to paper. It's something that really comes from like the heart, and it's also combined with the craftsmanship that these people have, and it all like blends together to make this album, right? And it's for what it is. It's a very it's a good album. It's not even a good album. It's a dope album, and for a compilation album, that's really hard to do. It's really hard to make a good dope compilation album, and I don't take any credit for this. Like these dudes like did that shit, and it's amazing.
You should take some credit for it.
I'm taking like 1% credit. That's it. But these dudes like they went out and
take at least two. Take at least two.
All right, I'll take 3% credit.
If Puffy can take credit, you can't.
Yeah. No, all jokes aside, and he alluded to it. Like we all were in different places in our life, but things were tough. And Brian talked about it. But Jacques really was the glue in not just even just a professional. I mean, like Jacques really is the one that knows all of us fairly well. Like Jacques is the connection with us and Brian. Jacques is my connection to Long Division. So in all ways, it's sort of like, it's interesting because this is a really cohesive project, and yet there's three distinct voices talking about an idea in it from their own way and vantage point, but you can see and feel sort of the connection, I think, through the music and this is respect to you, Cril. You took the time that's really appreciated to really see how those layers sort of connect. And I think that's what we want. I know that's what I want people to take away. I just really want people to sit. I make music for people to sit and listen to. Like, maybe not necessarily to go out and dance to. I mean, I want people to feel good and vibe to my music. But I'm a nerd. I like people to sit and dissect stuff. That's what rap used to be to me. Just sitting and listening. Like, what are they talking about? Like, who are these people that they're referencing? Like, what does that sound? That's the experience that I loved about rap music, because it brought me to learn about science and anthropology and history and all these other places because of how in which they were sort of like expressing it and explaining it. So I feel like we all kind of have that background, and I think that just naturally came into the project from where we're coming from. So it's sort of like, I feel like you're sort of like the proof of the success of what it is, because you were so like pulled in by the record, like, well, what is this about, and like, why did you say this, and the music's so amazing, so I couldn't not listen to it like that. Like that's I think what I know I wanted people to get away from. It's like to enjoy the listen, and appreciate the listen.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Vision. Yeah.
I was just gonna. I have what I consider kind of like not necessarily a boring answer, but like, I feel like a lot of times with forms of music like hip hop and probably also like rock and roll and other things, it's like, you get hung up on the idea that everything has sort of been done, and I'm not saying that this is like groundbreaking in some amazing way that's going to change the culture, but like forever. But like, I don't think that there's anything quite like this, and I think it is definitely like an interesting permutation of the idea of a compilation album or of a collaborative album, like and the more I listen to it, the more I realize that too. It's got kind of like this dreamlike quality that's kind of like behind itself. It's not exactly like everything's not on the surface, like Jacques keeps saying, layered. So that's what I mean, as like the listen, like, I mean, you kind of talking to us about our lyrics and about the beats in such a focused way, like just made me aware of certain things that I wasn't aware of about the album before too. So yeah, I guess that's like I said, almost a generic answer, but just it's something a little bit different in that way. Like, nothing's been quite done this way before. So that's my take.
No doubt. And I have to ask this question in closing, like, with the success of this project, do you guys see the foreseeable future of a part 2 to this? I mean, I would like to see posse cut, right? I would like to see an actual, like, I don't want to categorize things, but I feel like on paper it looks so much better when, like, I'll say it, I would love to see like a group name or something, like, like a collective group name, but staying with the same format where it's everyone has a solo track and it's sequenced in the same similar order. I think you guys got something special here, and I could see a group, but I mean, that's up to y'all, right? But I mean, just as the fan outside looking in, I could see a collective, because like when I title this show, I gotta name every name. So it's easier that way, but it's all cool. Like,
you can just use the name of the project. You can just use the name of the project, I think, right? I mean, that's
I'm gonna figure something out.
Yeah.
The lyrical five.
Like, all jokes aside, like, I just, even if you guys don't formulate a group, like, I would love to see a part 2 of this, even if it's the same display. Are you guys thinking?
I'm just gonna say, I think sequels are overdone. Thank you.
I'm with Brian. I like that this is a one-off. This particular idea,
not to say that I don't want to work with these guys more. Like, I'd love to, like, who knows? We might.
I work with you guys for sure.
Yeah,
but if we do, like, it'll be something different for sure.
Yeah,
it's not gonna be like, oh, part 2. Like, no, that's not gonna happen.
That's
I mean,
my point. That's
for
that's
me, like, no, it's always moving forward. What's next? You know, we would do something different. It wouldn't, yeah.
I
Not a
thought
sequel.
Jacques just
We
has
could
to
do a 90-minute posse cut. How about that?
cut in. That would be nice. An EP or a 12
Bonus track.
like that. Yeah. So I want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time. I know we're upon 2 hours, so I know you guys stayed a little longer than expected, but I appreciate it. And I guess in closing, I guess each of you can just kind of tell the people what you guys have next for your solo careers, so people can check for you beyond this project. So I guess you can go first, Long Division, and unmute yourself, let people know what's in store.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for a while, I was not even really involved with emceeing. I kind of took a hiatus. I was really involved with visual art for a while. I was focusing on that, and then I was playing bass in like a shoegaze band, like a rock band, for like about 4 years. But in the past year, I actually started getting back into it and like making my own beats, which I never really. I always wanted to do, but I started really doing that, and I got something for Jacques, in store. But yeah, so I've been focusing on doing that, and I have a few tracks, figure out like how I'm gonna get them mixed down and mastered and stuff. But I don't have anything really specific to plug any projects. But I will say I was listening to some of these other guys' projects. Tumes has an instrumental album, and I was listening to that today. And the other album he has with somebody else. It's like a joint album, but you have other, like Homeboy Salmon is on there, and Creature, and other people that that is dope, man. I was digging that, and that Stevie Wonder sample that I don't know if you replayed it or whatever. It was dope, man. I was digging it. So I'll play
Wonderful.
your thing.
Go ahead, Tumes. You can
What do I got coming? I've been actually releasing a lot of music recently. I mean, I had a couple things I put out last year. I put out another album that was like gestating for a long time. It was a collaboration I did out of Spain. One of the last things called Grand Mixer that's out there. I put out an instrumental record called The Noxulator not too long ago. And I'm actually like literally closing up on another instrumental record that kind of just spit out of me over the last couple months. So that should be out. I don't have a title for it yet. I want to get it out on the bandcamp. And I've been long working on another solo self-produce. I've been getting it mixed. Shout out to Willie Green. He's been mixing it for me, and just I'm gonna put that out when it's done. I don't really know. I definitely think this year. But it's that. And then, after that we see, I make music in a very kind of, I just make it kind of vibe now. I don't really have any other expectations. I've been doing this way too long to like have certain types of expectations, but I just enjoy doing it, as you probably can see looking over here. So I just kind of sit myself in here doing it a lot.
go ahead, Professor Brian.
Yeah. So I have another project that is been in the incubator for a little bit, and it's called Ebeline and Oblivion. And this is another project that I fully produce with a very talented singer-songwriter vocalist, taking the moniker of Ebeline, and it's on the way. That's all I can say. Everything's all wrapped, and we're just packaging things up for release at this point. So keep an eye out for that. So it's a little different because it's not on the straight rap tip, but it's all in tune with the full trajectory of what I've been doing and what I'll continue to do. So it all fits into place there. So that's the big one. Ebeline and Oblivion. Keep an eye out for that. Probably coming later this year. And then a lot more beat tapes will be coming out probably just in the digital realm soon. I'm going to be focusing more on just putting stuff out for folks to enjoy and listen to, a little less stuck on these big concept albums and So you'll be seeing a lot more output from me on that end, on the Bandcamp and Spotify, and some remixes, things like that. So just stay plugged in to Professor Brian Oblivion, and yeah, got some things in the works.
All right, Mikal, go ahead. Tell her.
Word. So I released a project right before the pandemic called The Passport, which is actually a record I'm working with artists from about 7 different countries in my travels from some of my tours. During the pandemic, I released a track, which is the advanced single for a project I'm doing with a brother by the name of Mr. Mayday. We go by as a group called the GOP, Gorillas on Patrol, album called The Murdica. And the track that's out on my Bandcamp is called COVID-16, produced by an Italian producer. Shout out to Neo from Zero Plastica in Genoa, Italy, longtime collaborator, friend of mine, homie from Nomadic Wax. Murdica is probably going to drop later in 2021. And then I'm also working on a collaborative project. Willie Green and I started a project a few years ago called the 24-Hour Nightmare Cycle. We're finalizing that. I mean, it's pretty much done, but we got some special bells and whistles. I can't really talk. I probably said too much already, but super excited about it because it's definitely coming to fruition. Willie Green, if you don't know him, definitely check him out. He's extra dope.
Shout out to Willie Green.
Extra dope. And I'm working on another project that's probably going to come after Murdica called Spectrums. Basically, it's an album that's partially produced by my wife, Dale Novella, who's an amazing singer-songwriter and producer. Neo's also on that, a couple other friends and homies. And all of that's coming later, 2021, 2022. You can check it all, Fresh Roots, fresh like your groceries, roots like reggae, freshroots.bandcamp.com. But the Murdica's advanced single, COVID-16 is out already, and the Passport, you can definitely check along with a whole bunch of other joints that I've been doing for a while. Like Tumes, I've been doing this a very long time.
Awesome.
It's still fun, still dope.
Wonderful. And Jacques, want to close out with what's next for you?
I don't really MC, but I'm supposed to be helping Long Division MC on a couple of tracks, so you can catch me on that. Maybe.
They were in a group called the Horsemen. They're on some low over here. They were a group for a minute. So he got stuff.
I have like 2 rhymes in my catalog.
Go look up DJ Dialect. Go look up DJ Dialect and the Horsemen. You'll find it. You'll find it.
No, honestly, I'm proud of a lot of that stuff.
Long Division is nice. So
that's why I'm saying it. It's dope. He hiding over here. I'm just saying.
I have like 1 or 2 lines. They're passable, for MC. In that I'm rapping and I'm rhyming words, but nothing more beyond that. But like outside of that, I am gonna try to. I might try to self-produce some stuff. I don't know yet. I'm not really holding myself accountable on that. But the goal I have is maybe make three tracks, 3 rhymes, 3 verses that go with it. That's the most I'll probably do outside of like helping Long Division. Anyone else who just wants like help with like designing their work, albums, I'll definitely do that. Just hit me up. I'd love to help you guys out, as you all know. And I mean, the big thing, if we do work on something later, maybe 1 or 2 of us, we'll put it out. But I think like, this project, I just want to plug the project real quick. Moses Herman Jacobs, right? Like, check it out. It's on Spotify. It's on iTunes. It's on Amazon. It's on all the streaming services. It's on Bandcamp, dupo.bandcamp.com. But yeah, like all the money, again, like it does go to this nonprofit, Equality for Flatbush. So none of it's going to us. It's all going to like a really good cause. And right now I'll let that project ride because I'm really proud of it. I'm really proud of just like being able to like work with these guys. Even though it took a long time to actually release it, I'm still happy with the product and like what I guess the impact it's doing. And dude, like Cril, thank you so much for even inviting us and taking the time to actually listen to it. Because like you just speaking like about each track and like just talking about the little things that you've noticed, you know, it means a lot to even to hear like one person, oh wow, they actually heard all this and they caught these little things that, you know, like Dan was saying, some of it I didn't catch and you did. I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting how he heard that, but like, oh, I can see how it all fits together. Yeah, it's really dope that you even took the time to listen to it before, you know, before inviting us. So I do appreciate you even
very thorough with your thing. I listened to the Arm & Hammer interview too. You know, if you really do it, it's great.
Yeah, no, it's great work, man.
Thanks, Cril. Thanks for having us. And thanks for everything.
Indeed. My last question to y'all is does the bandcamp version come with the lyrics?
Ooh, we got to work on that.
I got to work on that.
We have the lyrics somewhere. Right?
What is that platform you made us all use?
Bandcamp. No, sorry. Bandcamp.
Oh, this right now.
Basecamp.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, we have the lyrics?
I think we need the lyrics. I mean, I would like to get the lyrics.
That's truly old school. I feel that because
did we send it to you, Jacques?
I thought
you have them, Jacques?
I don't have them saved somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah, well, let's work on that. We can add that to the back end of the Bandcamp page. Let's work that in there.
We were revising too, I think. So.
All right, fellas. I want to thank y'all again. I appreciate y'all staying the extra time. I just want to say to all of our listeners and followers of Out the Box, make sure that y'all go to our website, which is outtheboxmedia.com, and get acquainted with all the other stuff we got going on. I want to thank my guests and Tumes, Jacques, Long Division, Brian, and Mikal for joining the show today. And until next time, I want to say peace, love, and light. Y'all stay safe, stay healthy, stay focused, and we will see you next Friday for the next Out the Box Talk show. Thank y'all, and we out of here. Peace.